Hey, Vlad. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I look excited today. I was getting this question, just to introduce us quickly. I was getting this question beforehand, what is Nagui Bihelek, a behavior intelligence guy? What are you doing talking about email and deliverability, And I go, hey, I run a business too, so I have the same challenges that a lot of these people have. And you and I connected late last year, and I was actually very excited to see just the extent of what you've been able to put together. So I'm excited. So without further ado, Vlad, if you don't mind, give me a quick background introduction, and we'll dive into this.
Yeah, so my name is Vlad Gvozdic. I've been in marketing for since about 2018. I got my start doing pay-per-click, so running Amazon and Google advertising, mostly for e-commerce companies. Worked with some lawyers, and when I started my own agency in 2018, I primarily used cold email to get my clients. Recently, uh, actually early 2024, late 2023, I kind of transitioned that cold emailing knowledge to actually working with clients who are looking for their own clients on a more B2B basis. And yeah, just setting up email infrastructure, copywriting, stuff like that.
Yeah, great. Well, I see people are still joining, so it's just a little bit of interest. And again, thanks for joining us, Vlad. My name is Nagui Bihelek. I run the Behavior Intelligence Institute, and I'm also a techie. So I've done a lot of software development, and these platforms, despite having been in the tech industry for more than 4 decades. Don't tell anybody I said that. I still find it's just moving so quickly. So, um, guys, if you're listening out there, please give us a thumbs up in the chat there so we know we're reaching everybody properly. And looking forward to your questions and diving into as much information as we can in the time we have. This is actually a big topic. I know you and I, Vlad, have talked about this sometimes, and I know the hours run away from us when we start diving into
They sure do.
some of these things. So we'll try and keep it a little bit under control. But
Right.
very good. So let me just put up a little bit of a slide for us to work from, just to keep us on track today. We're going to talk about the emailing journey, but we also want to talk a little bit about AI and some of the technology. So we'll maybe pick some of those topics to dive into. Um, the first thing I was really, you and I were talking about this just the other day, was what's happened. Why have we gone, even in the last 5 years, if we go back 10 years, we were still able to use email to run our business, to reach out
Right.
to people, right? And I feel like we're getting pushed into an area where the big players, they really want us to run ads, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And how do you compete in the space where ads can get pretty expensive? And if you've got competition that's got deep pockets, they can quickly push you out of the picture. A small business just can't compete really effectively with ads. Although I know you've done a lot of work with ads, so we might run
Yeah.
another session to talk about that.
Right.
The cold calling has been shut down completely. So I know my first business in 1996, it was you buy a list and you call people, right? And you connect. And it was B2B, just like I'm doing now. But even that has become quite difficult to do that. Numbers get blocked. Text messaging is now getting all kinds of rules about how you do that. So again, we're getting squeezed into, if you want to run a business, you need to run ads, and small business is having trouble competing with that. Social media is oversaturated. How do you get above the noise? All of these issues. But I think a lot of people have uh, put their head in the sand and gone, I don't know what to do. But I think email has still got an opportunity, and that's really why we're here to talk about that. So um, that's kind of my background introduction to that. What are your thoughts on some of these things, Vlad?
Yeah, I think you kind of brought up a very good point. Like coming from an advertising background, cost per clicks, conversions, even cost per clicks are going up, conversions are going down. Competition is kind of at an all-time high every year. And you know what? The reason that you're kind of pushed into pigeonholed into running ads is because ads are an auction, right? So if you're Google, if you're Facebook, if you're LinkedIn, if you have more people competing for the same placements, your profits rise.
Right.
They don't care if it's Microsoft or a giant tech company paying for that placement or a small mom and pop business. They want the most money for that placement. Um, yeah, cold calling. I mean, 2018 when I started, cold calling was what we did as well. I remember making like 50 to 100 cold calls a day. It worked pretty well. The pandemic, people kind of shut their phones off, stopped going into the office. Everything really changed, I think, with phone calls, with
Mm-hmm.
that, and that it's never really gone back to the way it used to be. Um, Email, I mean, emails had an absurd amount of changes since even like a year ago, right? But I still think it's the most consistent way of reaching people.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, like, if you think about when was the last time you checked your email, it was probably this morning. I think the main thing I tell people is if you can get deliverability down, which is if you're kind of doing redistributing your sending and some of the other stuff we'll talk about later, the main thing that will have you stand out is, do they care about what you're selling? Right? Is what you're selling, is what your offer is interesting enough to get them to at least engage with you in some way? That
Mm-hmm.
becomes the biggest differentiator
Mm-hmm.
nowadays.
Yeah. As you're talking there, I'm also thinking we are seeing an upsurge in SMS messages, even though they're somewhat taboo in
Yeah.
North America, right? Um, and we're seeing an upsurge also with WhatsApp, where
Yeah.
Facebook, after they took that over, and that's a topic for another conversation another day. But there again, Meta is driving more business to uh, WhatsApp as an alternative, but it comes again. They want you to run ads on there, so they've taken it over, but they're kind of moving in that direction as well. So we're seeing people. I go back to, as a small business, how do you find new clients if the internet is noisy, social media is noisy? How do you get above that noise? You've got to do a lot of content, a lot of
Yep.
activity. It's very, when do you run a business, right?
Right.
Uh, so the challenge we're seeing, and I wonder if you agree with this as well. It's not just that they're pushing us into running ads. I think we're Google, Yahoo, um, Apple, Microsoft, all of them are really not just shutting us out, but they're saying, keep the volume down, be
Yes.
reasonable,
Yes.
right?
Yes. 100% agree with that. Whenever, if we're talking cold email, if we're talking email in general, everything that has been done over the last 4 or 5 years, I would say, has been to reduce the amount of spam that's going out. So spam being just straight up scams, pyramid schemes, fraud, stuff like that. And the only way those things work is through insane volume. I mean, people were trying to send, one email to every household in the United States, right? So 100 million emails.
Mm.
The goal of the email providers has always been kind of like a never-ending arms race, right? How do we prevent these people from doing that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of technical things they're doing, but the simplest thing they're doing is they're saying, well, you can send emails, you can send cold emails, but we're going to cap the amount that we allow you to send. Uh,
Mm.
and that's usually on a per inbox basis. So, like if you have just your Gmail address, right, and you start thinking, okay, I'm going to start sending emails for Facebook ads, right? I want to run Facebook ads for companies, and you get a list and you try sending 500 emails a day. You're going to get to do that for a solid 100 emails maximum, and then everything's going to go to spam. They're going to send,
Mm.
it's going to be fine. You're just going to go to spam, and you're going to get 0 responses. Um, the next level is buying a domain, setting everything up, and then doing the same thing. You're going to get the same response there, 100 emails, and then you're going to go to spam because their AI, all of their stuff is going to pick up. You're sending the same text, the same intent behind this email.
Oh, I think Vlad's connection's dropped out, so we'll just watch for that to come back. I think I'm still online. Please give me a thumbs up if you're still connected to us. Here he is. Let me just turn that back on. Oh, you
Sorry
dropped
about that. Yeah, I think I dropped off. Where did I lose you, Nagui?
you're just a few seconds out. That's all.
A few
So,
seconds, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, basically, I was saying that if you're cold emailing, if you're kind of sending emails out, especially emails that are not being opened and not being rescued from spam. So, like the first 5 times your email goes into spam and it's not rescued from spam is a big
Mhm.
red flag. Is a big red flag for the email service providers.
Right.
So, if like your goal now is keep it low volume.
Yeah. Cool. The other aspect of this is we're talking about really focusing this on how does business reach new clients, and
Right.
and I was just thinking, as far as the number of email accounts around the world, business or small business is a small percentage, right?
Right.
The population of the world is a mix of entrepreneurs, employees, home-based people. Everybody's got an email, and the business population is a small amount. When you were talking about the spam and trying to get that under control,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
the abuse that it's going to all kinds of people without any rhyme or reason sometimes, right? It's um, to hook elderly people into scams. It's to achieve all kinds of malicious things that really
Yeah.
it's brought in rules and regulations to manage that. But I keep saying back to business. How is a small business still supposed to do that? And I'm sure the big players are not deliberately shutting small business out, right?
No, no, I don't think so. Because it is still possible. All you kind of have to think about now is you can't just spin up a domain and set up an email server and then send out 10,000 emails a day to your whole list, right?
Right.
That's just not going to work because most people who have a business, their emails are managed by Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, a few others, but most of them are managed by an email service provider.
Mm-hmm.
And those email service providers are looking at a lot of technical things when you're sending email. They're looking at SPF records, DKIM records, DMARC records. How old is the domain? What's the reputation of that particular email address? And obviously, what's the volume of emails that they're receiving? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're sending from, I don't know, let's say Domain A, you're sending 10,000 emails. Microsoft is the provider for 3,000 of those emails, and it's never seen you before, and all of a sudden it gets 3,000 emails from you in a day. That's a huge red flag for them. You're instantly
Yeah.
blacklisted.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the way cold email it kind of works now is you're looking to distribute your sending over multiple domains and multiple emails. So instead of
Mm.
sending, if you want to send 500 emails in a day, instead of getting one domain, one email and sending 500, you're going to do something like 10 domains, 30 email addresses, and then sending like 10, 15, 17, 20 emails from each email address every day. And this keeps the volume low. It allows you to do something called automated warm up, which we'll talk about a bit later. That and then it also allows you to one, keep your reputation strong with the email service
Mm.
providers,
Yeah.
and two, if an email gets burned, so if you're seeing yourself going into spam, not getting responses, it's very easy to replace it and just set up a new email and do the same process over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've just touched on so many things that I'm sure people are going, oh, how do I do that, right? But we'll dive into the how in a moment. And so the reality that you're talking about is, people need to think about being more targeted. And you're allowed to send thousands of email to your warm list, right? There's
Oh,
no
100%. Yeah, yeah. Now,
yeah.
this is everything we're talking about here for the limits is cold email. And the
Mm.
way cold email is defined is sending to a list that has not opted in to receiving an email from you. So they have no idea who you are.
Right.
And you're sending email to them for the purpose of, seeing if there's interest, hopping on a call, buying a product. But if you've got a list that, they submitted a form on your website, an ad, they're your clients, you won't have these problems because they're going to open your emails, they're going to engage with them, and they're not going to mark them as spam.
Mm. Right. And the reality, I guess, if you think about it, there's a lot of companies out there that are selling lists. So
Yeah,
there
oh
must
yeah,
be,
for sure.
there must be a business for that, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, Zoom Info, Apollo, Zoom Info is $1 billion business. Apollo, I think they raised an absurd amount of money, maybe 100 million or so recently. So
Mm.
lists themselves, like highly targeted lists, are a very, very important part of cold email for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And that it goes back decades, believe
Yeah,
me.
definitely.
My first business, like I said, I was able to buy lists. That's how we reached the whole country
Right.
in a short period of time. So lists are important. They're part of business. Ads are part of business. And talking about the types of companies that are out there supporting this kind of thing, and this is really what you were just alluding to, is there is a solution, guys. It's not impossible. It is possible, and that's what the expertise that we're really talking about here is all about. So I'm just going to jump into that next topic. And you're talking about the do's and don'ts. So I put some of those up on the slide here. Is there anything else that you would want to talk to, or maybe we can talk to some of these points, Vlad?
These are very good ideas. Probably the main thing would be where you say warm up your domain. What that means is when you set up an email address for the purpose of anything, it starts at reputation 0 with each of the email service providers. So they don't know who you are, they don't know what you do, they don't know if you're legit or a scammer or whatever you're doing. So warming up basically means, for our purposes, using automated emails, sending and receiving with other emails in the warm up pool to build up a reputation. So during warm up, what will happen is you'll send an email to another email address in the pool. That email might land in spam. If it lands in spam, it's automatically rescued from spam, which gives a positive signal that, hey, this email is interesting. This email is wanted. To stop putting it into spam. If it goes into inbox, it's opened, it's replied to, and then your emails are doing the same thing. This is probably one of the most important things to do when you're setting up
Right.
cold emailing.
Do you have to do that yourself, or
No, definitely not. That would get like out of hand. There's tools out there that we use
Right.
that'll basically automate this whole process. So you hook them up to
Mm.
the tool, and then it'll do AI generate emails, AI generate responses, and everything is done on a per inbox basis. So it's like
That's,
your email
yeah,
one is warmed up, email two is warmed up, and so on.
right. So that's pretty clever. It actually, if you if I'm in that pool and you're in that pool and I send you an email and it goes to spam, their software will pull it out of spam
Exactly.
and say, no, this is real, and it will reply to me
Yeah.
and back and forth to make sure that that credibility is handled for you. But you
Yeah.
can't do that with thousands. Again, it's still limited.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to like you have a lot of control over the warm-ups. We've played around with it over I think 600-700 email addresses, maybe even more. We usually don't send more than 30 email warm-ups in a day. And we
Hmm.
also don't send more than 20 cold emails from an inbox in a day. So the
Right.
way we achieve volume is through distributing across multiple different inboxes.
And you talked about the domain reputation. So I'm just going to go back to that for one sec because I want to get clarity on it. When I buy a new domain
Mhm.
specifically for that, it should be a domain that's different from my primary domain.
Yeah, it should be similar. So what you want to do is, for example, if you have behaviorintelligence.com, let's say that's your domain, um, you don't want to use that domain for cold emailing because your regular email addresses could end up going to spam, right? Even
Mhm.
if you set up different email addresses that you're sending cold emails from on that domain, you could still jeopardize your main emails. So you might do something like behaviorintelligence.co. You might do
Mm.
something like thinkbehaviorintelligence.com.
Mhm.
And really, this is kind of where AI comes in. You can use AI. You can literally use something as simple as ChatGPT, even the free version, and give it a prompt like, take this domain and give me um, 50 different domains I can use for cold emailing uh,
Right.
that play off this domain. Copy paste that, put it into GoDaddy or Namecheap, and see which of them are available.
Right. And I think that what you mentioned before is really important because we used to think that, okay, if my domain is nagi@acumatchbi.com, if I got fred@acumatchbi.com, that was a different email address and I could
Right.
come from that. But what you're saying is don't do that.
Yeah, so to some extent that is true. There's levels to flagging. So like level one flagging would be the email address itself gets flagged. But
Mm,
what if you've got 10 emails on a domain and they're all flagged, right? At some
right.
point, they're going to flag the domain itself. So you can keep making
Mm,
emails on that domain, but they're all going to get flagged like as soon as they're created.
right.
There's also something called domain blacklists. So one thing that's important to check when you buy a domain, like before you buy a domain for cold emailing, is whether your domain is on a blacklist because someone else used it, right?
Right.
Bad
Yep.
actors tend to buy domains in bulk, and I mean
Mm,
serious bulk, like 10,000 domains plus. Spin up 1,000 emails per domain and send that way. So if your domain that you want to use is on a blacklist, I would suggest not even buying it because
mm,
you're very, very likely to never be rescued from spam, no matter what you do, how good your warm up is, anything.
right. Now, someone was telling me that subdomains are treated as separate domains. Is that
To
true?
some extent, yes. To some extent, yes. Usually, subdomains are used for like email list, like email blasts to your subscribe list. But when you get into like cold emailing, they're practically the same thing because they're
Mm,
still tied to your domain. You can't have like you can't create a subdomain of Facebook, right? Because you don't own that domain. So
right.
they know whoever's using that subdomain owns that domain.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So be careful. Yes, it's treated separately, but it still can hurt the reputation of your primary
Yeah,
domain.
definitely.
If I have, and we have a few that we use with our clientele, like message.acumatchbi.com.
Right.
That's going to be blacklisted if that got blacklisted, it's going to hurt my domain. So
It could. Yeah, it could for sure.
so it really is important to get some good advice before you dive into this, or better still, if you're not comfortable doing this, it's why I came to you, because sometimes it's better to work with someone who's done this thousands of times than to try and learn it from scratch.
Yeah, definitely.
A few other points on here. I'm not sure if we've covered all of it, but the personalization. What are your thoughts on using AI for creating the scripts and things like that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, AI can be very powerful to come up with ideas. I would steer clear of telling, even if you have the paid chat GPT or you have a specific email copywriting I would steer clear of saying something like, here's my website, here's some info on what I do. Write a cold email sequence. It writes the sequence, you copy the sequence, you put it into your emailing software, and you just send that out. The reason for that is that's what everyone is doing, right?
Yeah.
If you open your inbox right now, if you open an inbox of an email you've been using for more than a year, chances are you can find 5 AI generated things you've gotten in the last week alone. And the truth is, people don't like it. People don't like thinking that this is something that AI wrote. The
Mhm.
use of AI is still very important, but you use it to bounce ideas off of. So you might write something in your own words, plug it into ChatGPT and say, critique this. Let me know, what do you think about this copy? Or is there a different way for me to phrase this? Or phrase this for different types of people, right? The cold emails that you send to finance executives are not going to be the same that you send to e-commerce companies or entertainment companies or something like that.
Mhm.
So using it as kind of uh, an assistant versus just an employee
Right.
is generally the way that we've had success with AI.
Yeah, and their AI tends to produce some pretty common words all the time.
Yes, yes.
And, yeah, elevate your business.
Yeah, and it's everyone is using that, right? That's like probably the most common
Yeah.
subject line
Mm,
in your spam folder,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah, yeah.
Hope you're well. That's another one you should never use. Uh,
Right.
there's a bunch of anything that seems too AI, you want to steer clear of.
hmm Yeah. It's also interesting the ability to when I see follow up smartly there, I'm thinking, and not abusing the system. Some people have a sequence of 5, 7 emails.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you were advising us the other day that that's just crazy. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
again?
So the way to think about follow-ups is realistically, they're probably not going to remember you, right? So
Mhm.
yes, it's in the same thread, but you're expecting that they're going to go back and read the initial message. So if your follow-up is something like, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this?" Now you add another degree of separation to where they have to look back and see what you said before. So a good follow-up would be offering a bit more value. For example, maybe you led with a case study where you say, did this for this client to get this result. You want to add a different case study now or rehash the other case study with different KPIs, but there should be a reason for your follow-up. It should also sound human. So the whole thing with the reason cold email is so powerful, the reason it beats ads isn't the reach, right? There's two things. It's cheaper. It's always going to be cheaper than advertising, and it's more
Mhm.
personal. Well done cold email seems like a person wrote it to another person.
Uh-huh.
And the conversation you
Yeah.
have is much more personal than submitting a form, getting a call from a customer support representative, and then moving down the funnel, basically.
Mm. Yeah.
So if you can keep it personal, if you can make the person reading that email think this email was designed for me and written for me, the closer you get to that ideal, the more success you're going to have with cold email.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost the difference. going to a network group where people are there to network and walking up and introducing yourself, you can tell them all about yourself. But if you run into someone cold in the street and you puke that out, they're gonna
Yeah, exactly. That's actually that's a great point.
right.
Exactly. Like the context does matter for sure.
Mhm. Yeah. So make sure it's relevant. Go to the right areas to target the right people, talk in their language. Do your
Yeah.
research. Right.
Talking there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the main way to do, obviously, the ideal cold email is you're writing one-to-one, right? You're actually doing research on their company, on them, and then you're typing out a cold email to them from you.
Mhm.
That's not feasible in any way. Like, how many of those can you really do in a day? 10, 20, without doing anything else?
Mhm.
So the goal of cold email is to chunk people. So basically to separate people into separate ideal customer profiles, ICPs. And that ICP should be as narrow as possible while still giving you enough contact info, obviously. And
Mhm.
then what you do is, for example, let's say we have a client that sells portable toilets. They do great with cold email. Uh, so we know construction companies use portable toilets. We know who at a construction company to contact for this, and we know what they want to know when they get an email like this. So we get a list of those people, and we write an email for the ideal construction company employee that deals with purchasing.
Mhm.
And you send those emails out, and it seems like you wrote them individually for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my favorite topic now. You're talking statistics, and I'm a bit of a scientist, so I love the data. And really, you've done some amazing stuff that we've worked together on, and that is to really do a small volume test and compare,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, the uh, the thought that comes to mind, even when we're you know, only a decade or so ago, we used to be able to do telemarketing. A lot of people were just doing volume, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And really, what you're talking about is pick a. Even if you're saying, I know I work with a lot of coaches, and they say, "But I can help anybody. How do I narrow it down?" And I go, pick one and just work one at a time. Pick
Exactly.
restaurants, right?
Yeah.
Pick 100 restaurants instead of 10,000 restaurants, and make it personable. Perfect your message, and you've been doing a lot of that, right?
Yeah. So, what the reason people used to do just scale, 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 more volume is because it works. You can have a suboptimal message or a message that's kind of or okay, but if you reach enough people, it's going to resonate with someone.
Right.
So now that reaching a lot of people is more expensive and more difficult than ever, we've had to adapt. So now we have to think, maybe you can work with, everyone, but everyone can be segmented further, right? That next segment can be segmented even more. Like maybe you can segment your everyone into five of your top industries.
Hmm.
Those five of your top industries can be segmented into people with under 50 employees and between 50 and 200 employees, and then 200 employees plus. Each of those are going to have a different email copy that you're sending. Each of those, if you're running ads, each of those should have a different ad associated with them because their priorities, their goals, their company structure, it's all completely different. They're completely different people. They speak a different language. They have different priorities. They have different things they care about in their day-to-day life at work. So the more you can segment, the more you can target effectively.
Mm.
And really, the way to do it is start from the very top, take your everything or whatever your broadest definition is, and then go as deeply as you can. Go from are there certain roles that I can target? Are there different roles? Are there roles that maybe a purchasing department could be contacted, but maybe also like a COO, right? So
Mm.
they come up with an email copy for one, and then an email copy for the other one, and speak their language. Talk about how what you do can benefit them. And yeah, as long as you can, as long as you know your business, and I'm sure
Mhm.
everyone knows
Yeah.
their business far better than they know cold emailing, you can
Mhm.
have an idea of what your clients want, what different clients want.
And what you're saying is do your research if you're going to pick a segment, and it's a lot
Definitely.
easier today to do that research using
Oh yeah,
ChatGPT, things
for
like
sure.
that. Even if you do a Google search these days, the first thing you get, if it's something that the ChatGPT can help with, you get some information about that. So doing the research, understanding a topic, and testing before you grow your volume. The numbers are the key. So I'm just going to ask, maybe you can share some of the numbers, because we all get so discouraged when we send out 100 emails and we get no response. We send 1,000 and still get no response, and we get discouraged, and then we want to go back to burying our head in the sand and going, this doesn't work for me.
Right,
It's a
right.
spiral, right? How do you
No,
get above that? Yeah.
so the thing to think about with numbers, the standard metric that people would look at with emailing would be open rate. So the way open rate is tracked is you add a small HTML pixel that that basically triggers when an email is opened. So the what we do is different. We don't send with HTML. We send as plain text only. So if you think about you opening up your email to send an email to a friend of yours, right? You're not going to add HTML. You're not going to add a tracking pixel. You're not going to make it pretty with a nice template, right? You're going to type out your email and you're going to hit send. Um, so the metrics we track are response rate, positive response rate. Very, very simple. The response rate you get is the number of people that have responded to you in some way, positive or negative. And that doesn't count autoresponders, that doesn't count out of office, that doesn't count anything but a human being responding to you. So if you set up your emails correctly, you're going to look at between a 2% and a 5% cold email response rate. 5% plus. So if you get more than 5%, it means you're targeting really, really well. It's very well personalized. If you
Mhm.
and the highest you can really realistically expect to get is about 10%. That's the highest I've seen. Um, and that just means you've got a great list, you've got a very high personalization, and you've probably got a very good offer. Now, that's the actual response rate. So if you send out 100 emails, 5 people respond, that's a 5% response rate. Now, the positive response rate is of those 5 that responded, what is the number that are interested?
Right.
Um, you want a 10 to 20 plus percent positive response rate, which means so for those 5 you send, if you get at least one, those 5 that answer, if you get at least one interested, you've got an okay offer. If you can get a 40%, or like 40 to 50% is about as high as you can get for cold email from a positive interested rate. It
Mhm.
means you hit the nail on the head when it comes to your offer. So
Mhm.
each of
Okay.
those metrics tell you a different thing. The response rate is, are you landing in the inbox and are you targeting properly? The positive response rate is, are you targeting properly and is your offer good enough?
Mm. So 2 to 5% response, and out of those, maybe a 25 to 40% of those. So we're really saying 1 to 3%
Yeah,
as a positive response.
about of the total emails you send, exactly. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You can see why. I can see why a lot of people get discouraged very quickly, right?
Yeah, but if you look at the cost of those leads that you get, and they are leads, by the way, you should treat them as leads. You should treat them the same way you would treat a lead from Facebook, or a lead from Google Ads, or a lead from LinkedIn. You don't just send a cold email, they respond, you ask them for a call, they don't answer, and you're done with them. You should contact them on LinkedIn, add them to your flow. Basically, if you have SDRs that call people who show interest, you really want to treat cold email leads the same way you would a lead from any other source. because really they have in some way expressed interest in what you're offering.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so just recapping a couple of those points, just where we got to so far. Get a number of domains and set up email accounts for each of those and warm them up. Now you need to set up the domain properly with all of the DNS settings for
Yeah.
DMARC, DKIM, all of that stuff. You need to really know what you're doing there. Then you can set up, what did you say? Is it 3 emails per domain or 10 emails?
You can do so 10 would be extreme. I would never do 10 per domain. You don't really want to do more than 4. So 2 to 4 per domain. 3 is
Right.
the sweet spot there. So 3 is what we do.
Great. So you get 10 domains, 3 emails per domain. You got yourself 30 email accounts, and you would only send a maximum of 30 from each one. That's 900 emails, basically.
Yeah. And we kind of pare down our volume even lower. We do between 15 and 20 per email address.
Right.
You can do 30. You can
Right.
do that. But
Okay.
the longer you do that, the more you run the risk
Yeah.
of going into spam like 3 to 6 months down the line.
And so if we're sending out, I was going to say 1,000 is a good number to work with, but out of that 1,000, you would want maybe 10 positive responses if you're targeting really well. But that's a lot. How many businesses can really handle that? So
Right.
I'm almost, I like your approach, keep it to 10 to 15, aim for 300, and have a manageable size, because all of that data, that's a lot of data to even process. Otherwise, you're really doing the shotgun approach. You
Yeah.
don't know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, you're also burning through your list fairly quickly. Like especially when you don't know what offer is going to resonate. So what we do, we'll do like different angles on an offer and then run with what works and cut what doesn't. So if you just come up with one and then you blast it out, like you don't forget, you're not limited to 10 domains, 30 email addresses, right? You can do 50 domains, 150 email addresses, and you can do 2,000 emails in a day. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. It's just a bit more setup. But you're gonna just burn through your list very, very quickly. And if your offer isn't good, even if you're getting responses, even if you're getting clients, you could be getting more. You could be doing better than what you're doing.
Right. So I just put up the next slide, and that is really the evolution of some of the things that are happening with AI. And I've scheduled another session in a couple of weeks to dive into a lot of the automation side of things. But I wanted to just touch on that and get your thoughts on a couple of these. Can you use AI to help you with that personalization? What about the deliverability? Can it really help with that? I think you've kind of touched on that already. The follow-ups to qualify people, I think there's a lot of new tools showing up that are helping put in place some AI to qualify people more easily. So we'll touch on that. But optimizing the emails, what are your thoughts on some of these? I think you've touched on that already, but maybe just to recap some of your thoughts, Vlad.
Yeah, sure. So probably the most promising tool for AI personalization, follow-ups, all that type of stuff is called Clay, CLAY.com.
Okay.
And they are basically a merge of ChatGPT and Google Sheets. They allow you to use AI to do research on company websites, LinkedIn, and you can basically do that at scale. So here's an example that you can use it for. You get a list, you put it into Clay, you say you tell their Claygent AI, you give them a prompt. The prompt would be something like, go to this website, tell me, is this company B2B or B2C? And then the AI will give you a reason and it'll return B2B or B2C. And you can then, if you're selling B2B, you can exclude all the B2C people from your list immediately. You can use it for a lot more complicated things. You can have it say something like, "Hey, who would this company want to sell to? Give me 5 examples of companies this company sells to." And then you can do that at scale. So you can do that if you have a list of 10,000, you can do that for every single one of the 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with Clay is it's absurdly expensive. It's $800 for 50,000 credits, and 50,000 credits. So a credit is used whether you make a mistake or not. A credit is used if you're testing a credit, and 2 to 3 credits are used for some more complicated tasks. And
Mm-hmm.
for a list of 10,000, if you do it well, like if you don't make any mistakes, you can do it in 50,000 credits.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's $800. I believe that's their plan. So
Right.
it
Okay.
really nowadays only makes sense for more enterprise level things, but that's
Mm-hmm.
where I see the most potential is kind of letting AI help you do research on companies at scale, um, on their LinkedIn, on their website, on their company LinkedIn, on their personal LinkedIn, and being able to prompt it in such a way that you get a lot more information that you can then use to craft your cold email for each individual company.
Right. That's quite a bit of work. But is Clay more suited to agencies like yourself, or?
Yeah, I would say they're more suited to agencies or very enterprise clients. Like
Mhm.
if what you're selling, if the product or service you're selling is quite high ticket, play might make sense because
Mm.
um, getting a sale is so valuable to you. But if you're just if it's honestly, even if it's under like 5, $10,000, it probably doesn't make sense to use just yet. Their prices have dropped, so these are their new prices. I believe they were like 1,200 for 50,000 credits, maybe late
Mm.
2024, like September, November 2024. So you can just see like prices will be dropping. There will be more competition coming in, but as it stands, they are the best, but they're also the
Mm.
most expensive.
Right. Okay. And for sending out emails, etc., I think you use instantly. We've used
Yeah,
instantly.
Instantly is pretty solid. I That's what I started using. There's also Smart Lead and a few other competitors popping up, but Instantly was kind of first to market with this. They
Mhm.
have very good support. There's something I use on a daily basis, something the team uses. They do everything you need, so they basically connect all the inboxes together, set up the warm up, and they let you monitor the responses in one inbox, so you don't have to be
Mhm.
logged into 30 plus email addresses at once.
Right. And that support is really important. My webinar last week, I think we talked a lot about the speed to respond is
Yes,
so
very important.
critical.
Yeah,
Uh, and that's why AI in the follow ups can be really useful. If you're busy on a phone or busy with a client and a lead, you're getting a positive response and you don't act quickly, you
yeah,
potentially hurt that lead, right?
yeah,
So this is where the AI can at least respond to them. It can keep them warm. It can book a meeting. It can do all kinds of things. And we'll talk some more about that in a couple of weeks. Next week, I'm going to talk about setting up your chatbot to actually manage some of that stuff as well. So thanks for tackling that. I'm just looking at the clock. And we're really coming to the end of this a little bit. So email isn't dead, guys. Don't be
definitely
discouraged,
not. No.
right? But you need to think differently. You need to uh, not do the blasting, right? Um, there are AI powered tools that can help you, but again, in order to get above the noise, you got to sound differently. If everybody's using AI, and I talk to a lot of business owners, you talk to a lot of business owners, talk to coaches, they're generating blogs and videos and
Yeah,
stuff using AI. Everybody's starting to sound the same.
yeah,
So you're not differentiated, right? The personalization, don't spray and pray. do some analytics and studying of what's working, focus, take a smaller chunk to practice with, would be my advice. Is there anything else you might add to this, Vlad?
Yeah, I like your phrase there. Email isn't dead; it's evolving. That's exactly right. It's constantly evolving. So, like, what works today might not work tomorrow. What worked 6 months from now doesn't work anymore. And really just staying on top of it and watching, what are your response rates looking like? Is there a pattern in the people that are responding? Is there a certain hook or a certain call to action or a certain offer that you're sending that works the best?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I want to leave people with is that there are three things that cold email needs to do well for it to work. Number one, you need deliverability. So you need to actually get it into inbox. Number two, you need to contact the right person. So you need to contact the right person at the company. You need to contact them in the right way. And number three, the offer that you're sending needs to be interesting enough for them to engage with it. So if your offer is very generic, if it's something that you're using for like referral clients, it's not going to go as well in cold email. So it needs to be a cold friendly offer. There needs to be something unique or interesting about it to get them to at least hear you out, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And thanks for summarizing those things. It's really important. And I was just thinking, I asked you a question the other day. I'm going to put you on the spot with that same question. That is, lead hunters, that's your area of expertise. What are the top two reasons that people come to you because of this is the problem that I'm having? Can you help me with this?
Sure. Top reason would be the technical side of it, setting up all the email addresses, the domains, and setting it up properly for proper deliverability, which is step one in getting your cold email to work. That's probably the main reason people come is because they either don't know how to, they don't want to find out, they don't have the time, etc. Um, the second reason would be they've tried it in the past and it hasn't worked out. Whether they've made some mistakes with setup or they've kind of done too much volume and burned domains, whatever the reason is, it just hasn't worked out. But they see people doing it, they see it working, and they want to do it again.
Yeah, yeah. Good point. Yeah, that technology is such a big one all the time. So many business owners struggle with technology. But hey, there is a much younger generation that doesn't have that challenge, but it's still
True.
very time consuming to figure out how to get all of those pieces working together and run a business.
Yeah, there's an opportunity cost to having to learn all these things and do the other things that you have to do to keep your business running. So it for a lot of people, it's just not worth it to invest the time to try it, to
Mhm.
make a mistake and then try it again until they actually figure it out because someone's already figured it out
Right.
for them.
Cool. I'm just going to leave people with this slide while I see if there's any questions. We'll open up the floor here for some quick questions. If there aren't any, please, these are the email addresses if you want to find Vlad. It's leadhunter.net. If you want to check out our platform, bizdmp.com. And look, I'm sure Vlad would be glad. Glad would be Vlad.
Really
Um,
glad.
I would be more than happy to meet with you if you've got a specific question, and he can point you in the right direction,
Yeah, for
or
sure.
we can get you into our network and also work with you on that. So just watching for any questions. I don't see any just yet. I think we've covered a lot today, Vlad. But,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Quite a bit of an info dump, I think.
yeah, yeah. So it's doable. We're not being shut out. We're just need to learn how to play the game properly. I think maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that assessment. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks again, sir, and you have yourself an amazing rest of the day.
You as well. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
All right. This will take just a couple of seconds to shut down, but we'll talk again soon. See
Talk
you,
again
Vlad.
soon. Good to see you again. See ya.